Hi everyone, welcome to Maximum Attack Rallying. You've joined me in the middle of Norwich on a day that is not nearly as sunny and warm as I hoped. The castle is in the background over there. You can't really see it though because I had to sit somewhere that was a bit more sheltered because it's quite windy and summer seems to have run away. But we're not here to talk about that. We're not here to talk about the British weather. We're here to talk about Rally Portugal, which turned out to be a massive weekend for Thierry Neuville, but perhaps more importantly for Hyundai. So I think it's fair to say, isn't it, that a Toyota driver is going to win this year's WRC Drivers' Championship. I think it's also fair to say that Toyota are going to win the Manufacturers' Championship. But it was still really important for Hyundai to stop the rot, and they have done that. They have done that very successfully this weekend. Yes, Neuville had a bit of good fortune, didn't he? Because Sebastian Ogier had a puncture on the penultimate stage. If he hadn't got that, he probably would have gone on to win the rally. But that's how it is, isn't it? That is how motorsport is, and you have to take your luck when it comes your way. And this win will be a significant boost to the Hyundai team, who have had to sit and watch, haven't they, while Toyota have won every single rally up to now. And to be fair, you can't take anything away from Neuville. He's going to be absolutely thrilled, isn't he, to win this one, especially after he crashed out of the lead in Croatia. And while this wasn't a lightning performance by any means, there were a couple of stage wins, and it was solid, wasn't it? It was a solid, steady performance. He did what he had to do, and he did what all good drivers do. He put himself in the position to capitalise when something went wrong for someone else, and in this case it was Ogier, and he was there to pick up the pieces, and that is how it has to be sometimes, isn't it? I think if nothing else, it should be a big confidence boost for him, for the team, after what has been a really, really difficult I was going to say start to the season, but even last year was pretty tough, wasn't it? So, you know, from that perspective, I think they have to go away from this one really, really happy. And it wasn't just Neuville, was it? You know, Adrian Fourmeau could have been the one that come Sunday was standing on the top step of the podium. He was leading the rally in the early stages, showing good pace, and until he made that mistake on stage 8, you know, he was well in it, wasn't he? And could well have gone on and got his first win. I understand there was a bit of a braking issue, and it just means that, you know, again, it didn't quite come together for Fourmeau, did it? And I think he's going to be frustrated about that. But, you know, just like Neuville, I think he has to be encouraged as well. You know, the pace of the Hyundai on gravel was good, and he has shown, hasn't he, on a personal level, that he can still match the best in the business. So, you know, I think he does have to go away from this with a certain level of disappointment, but also with a certain level of positivity. You know, after Japan, the rest of the season is all on gravel, and he has a chance to get his first win, doesn't he? So, not terrible, but not great. But I think, you know, in the context of where the team is, I think there's positives. Danny Sordo was obviously the least happy of the Hyundai drivers. He finished 8th. He had a drive shaft issue, I think, on Saturday, didn't he? Running with a cow as well at one point. And more importantly, I think a whole lot of complaints about the Hankook tyres. He wasn't happy, was he? And he wasn't at the races all weekend. He never really looked like challenging those ahead of him. He was complaining at one point about having to choose the tyres the night before, and it just didn't quite work, did it? And that surprised me. I thought he might actually be the top Hyundai driver, but this was not a stellar performance from Sordo. He did a job, he brought the car home, which he's expected to do, but I would have liked to have seen him a bit closer to the podium places. So for me, a bit of a disappointing one from Sordo's perspective. He will not be the most disappointed man leaving Portugal though, will he? Because Sebastian Ogier, oh my goodness. What a cruel ending to the weekend. He was on course to win the rally, had it cruelly snatched away when he got a puncture on the penultimate stage. I think, you know, it's difficult, isn't it? He hadn't really done anything wrong. He'd taken a little bit of time to get up to speed and to get the setup of the car right. But, you know, in typical Ogier form after that, he'd done the job. He was where he needed to be. He was on the pace. And everything was going well right up until it wasn't it? And I think the critical thing in a way isn't this rally result in itself. I think it's actually the impact it's going to have on his chances for the title. You know, he has been insistent that he's only going to do a part-time programme. 9 rallies, I think it is, isn't it? Basically around family time and being off the school holiday so he can be with his family. Absolutely fine, understandable, get that. But, you know, if you look at last year, you know, he said the same thing, basically, but ended up doing a couple more rallies and winning the title. The big difference is that last year he put himself in a position where it was worth him doing those extra events. You know, in his first 4 events in 2025, he had 3 wins and a second place. Contrast that with this year, he's had 1 win, 1 third place, a 6th place in Portugal this weekend, and an 11th place. And he is already 56 points off the championship lead. I don't think you can ever write Ogier off, but his title chances, I think, for 2026 are much, much more distant than they were last year. And I mean, it's a shame, isn't it, in a way? You know, it was a strong performance. He took the lead on Friday, didn't he, when Formo had his incident. And, you know, in typical style, he managed the lead, demonstrated that he can still hold off, you know, a charge from someone else in Oliver Solberg. And he just didn't get the outcome, did he? He just didn't get the outcome that he probably deserved. So, difficult weekend. And I think, for me, I think the championship is going to be a bridge too far. But as I said, it's too early to tell, isn't it? Too early to tell. I suppose you could also contrast it, couldn't you, with Elfyn Evans, who ended up having a pretty good weekend, all told. You know, he rode out what was a difficult rally and came away with a championship lead of 12 points. The pace wasn't amazing by any means. You know, it was better than last year where he didn't do very well, but he got a little bit of help, didn't he, from the rain. You know, the weather wasn't very good, and that probably helped to limit some of the damage. But, you know, he managed to put the car on the podium, extend the championship lead. He got 2nd place, I think, on Super Sunday, I want to say, 3rd fastest power stage time. It's all good, isn't it? You know, I think it's what he needed to do, and it's performances like that can win you championships. So, I think it was a good weekend all told, even if the pace wasn't amazing. Crucially, you know, Solberg only scored 2 more points than Evans, so he's not made any massive dent in Evans' championship lead. So, you know, the next few rallies are going to be absolutely crucial, aren't they? Particularly on that score. You know, he's got a 31-point lead, I think it is, over Solberg, and he needs to manage that. Solberg has shown, hasn't he, without any doubt, that he's fast, but he's also shown that he can be erratic with a few issues. You know, this weekend again was not perfect. I think he went off at the same point, didn't he, as Formo, managed to get away with it, but it wasn't enough. Despite his pace, despite that attack on Ogier that I mentioned, it wasn't enough to get the win. He did have some tyre issues, just as everyone else did, didn't he? But which didn't help. But, you know, it shows, doesn't it? I think the thing we have to take from this is that the battle for the remainder of the season is going to be absolutely fascinating. You know, you've got Solberg, super fast, still a little bit error prone. He's going to be absolutely trying to hunt down Evans, who is Mr. Consistency. As I said, just needs to manage it from here on, focus on banging in podiums, while Solberg just has to try and score as many points as possible. So in championship terms, it's going to be fascinating. A double podium for Toyota, there's not to be sniffed at as well, is it? I think perhaps, you know, just sticking with Evans for a moment, the biggest moment of his weekend was an unfortunate one, wasn't it? We had this recovery vehicle on stage 7 somehow managed to get through, I believe, 3 checkpoints, I think I read on dirtfish.com. €15,000 fine for the rally organisers as a result. The whole thing was madness, wasn't it? It was insanity, you know. As I said, this truck apparently passed 3 checkpoints, but no one stopped it. I mean, how did that even happen? And what's even more mental than that is that when this truck had pulled off the road, the same company apparently sent a second truck onto the stage. I mean, what? So this second truck pulled on, I think it was ahead of Johan Rossell, and that caused the stage to be cancelled. I mean, there's nothing more really to say, is there, other than the organisers really need to have a long, hard look at what happened and figure things out, and maybe this recovery company should be given a short kick up the backside and not invited back. But yeah, not great, was it? Not great. In terms of the other Toyotas, a quick mention of those. Samuel Paiari's great run of podiums came to an end. He had to change a tyre on the same stage as Ogier, so that kind of ruined his result. I think he finished 7th in the end, and Takamoto Katsuta, he finished 5th. Again, not really at the races. Well, he had those massive highs, didn't he, with 2 wins on the bounce, but not quite so good this time once again. That then takes us to M Sport, and I think it's safe to say that it was a mixed weekend for the British team. There was a crash from John Armstrong, which was not a mistake he needed, and it marks a messy rally, doesn't it? A messy weekend. Another non-finish, another unclean event. He clipped a bank, tipped the car over, and that was that. He was surprised, I think he said, by the lack of grip, and that roll ended his weekend on the spot. That's not good. These things do happen, of course, but Armstrong needs a clean rally. He's shown speed. He's impressed me with his speed at times so far this year, but there have been mistakes, haven't there? And I think he needs to get on top of that before questions start being asked. Josh McAleen, we should talk about him, shouldn't we? Not a perfect weekend by any means. He had a pretty embarrassing off on the Super Special on Saturday, sliding his Puma rather pathetically into a barrier. His car was repaired though, unlike Armstrong's, and he did bounce back from that, almost claimed his first stage win on the first pass of FAF on Sunday morning, so that was good. He was just pipped to that stage win by Robert Verves, which showed how difficult the conditions were, but I think he can probably still just about claim a moral victory for that, as obviously beating the Rally 1 cars is what really matters. So I think he'll be fairly happy to say that he was the fastest Rally 1 car on that stage, and that is a bit of a boost for him, isn't it? The third Puma, Martin Sesks, it felt like a little bit of an anonymous weekend for Sesks, didn't it? Not quite the fireworks we've come to expect from him. There was a double puncture on stage 10, I think, and he clipped a bank at some point. There was a second fastest time on Amarante, which is a good thing, and he had a third and a couple of fourth place stage times. So it wasn't bad, was it? There was some speed, but I think that initial magic that we saw on his first couple of appearances and the fireworks we saw in Saudi Arabia at the end of last year has maybe faded a little bit. And I think, for me, it's indicative really of a problem for M Sport. It's undeniable to me that Sesks is their brightest prospect, but he can't afford to be in the car full time, and they are unable to afford or unwilling to spend the money on having him in the car full time. And that's a problem, isn't it? Because time out of the car, as we all know in rallying, is a killer, isn't it? You can't afford to not be in the car, not be doing the recce's, not be getting the stage mileage, not be getting the testing, because that is a major disadvantage. So I think that is a real shame. He's shown potential. He's shown that he can challenge for wins in what has been a relatively low number of Rally 1 starts, and he's not in the car full time. That is a problem. And from his perspective, I hope he can find some investment to change that. But because if he can't, it's going to be a very difficult road, isn't it? So tricky weekend in that respect for Sesks, but at least he did show some reasonable pace. Let's just wrap things up with WRC2 then. I think I predicted that Johan Russell was going to win this rally. That went out of the window pretty quickly, didn't it? He made a mistake on Saturday, and that ruined that prediction. Still, you have to say, the Lancia proved that it is pretty good on the loose, and that is very important. Russell set some quick times. Nikolai Gryazin, he finished second in the RC2 class. He wasn't registered for WRC2 points this weekend, or last weekend, but he was the second fastest Rally 2 car, so it does show that the car has the pace. Just didn't quite work out, did it? And unfortunately for Russell, he finds himself in a really strange position. So he's leading the championship, but he's already nominated for rallies. Crashed out of this one in terms of the result, and he had to super rally. So he's got a tricky year ahead. You know, he's only got a couple more events that he can nominate for points, so he has to choose those very, very carefully indeed, and hope that his rivals drop a few scores, because he might not win the championship based on that, and that would be a shame, because I think he is, for me, the top driver in that category right now. In terms of who did win, it was Timo Sunnen. He came out on top ahead of Rupa Korhonen and Andreas Mikkelsen. Jan Solens, he was in the fight as well, but he had some tyre issues and an off-road excursion on the final day. That dropped him to 4th in WRC 2 when he could well have been in the fight for victory there. But nice to see Sunnen back on top, I guess. You know, he's had a very difficult couple of years, hasn't he, struggling to get out in the car as much as he'd like. And I remember when I went to Portugal a couple of years ago, he had a pretty terrible weekend. So he's slowly rebuilding. And, you know, he had a good start to his career, didn't he, at the top level, but it seemed to fade away. So at least he's back in that respect, and we'll have to see what happens there, whether he can become a regular challenger. I'm going to stop talking, though, before I get blown away by the wind, although the sun has come out, which is rather nice, isn't it? But there's some very black clouds that way, so maybe it will rain at some point. I don't know. You probably don't care about that. Anyway, I want you to let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think Neuville was a worthy winner? Do you think this is a corner turn for Hyundai? Do you think that they can recover and actually have any of their drivers in the fight for the title? Not sure about that, but let me know if you think they can. While you're there, make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons, of course. And I will say thank you for watching. Thank you for putting up with the wind, and I will see you again in the next video.